Dear students, in this session we are going to discuss about events in JavaScript. Let us start this session by discussing what an event is. An event occurs as a result of some activity. So an event is some notable action to which a script can respond. An HTML event can be something the browser does or something a user does. It is a notification that something specific has occurred. It may be browser activity or it may be a user activity. Events are associated with specific HTML elements. For example, a user clicks on a link in a page, then page finish loaded, mouse cursor enter a particular area, a preset amount of time elapses at the time of form submission. These are some examples for events which are associated with HTML component. Often when events happen, you may want to do something. JavaScript lets you execute code when events are detected. HTML allows event handler attributes with JavaScript code. So event means it is some action to which a script can be responded. The browser may trigger some events such as page loading, but most often they are initiated by user interaction such as when they click, use a form widget, or even the mouse move over some page element. So what happens here, it is a particular change. If a change occurs on a particular web page, this type of events should be triggered. It can be in the cases of a user clicking on a link or a page loading finishes, or if the mouse pointer enters a particular area, likewise. Now we can see what is event handler. An event handler is a segment of code, usually a function, to be executed when an event occurs. So the process of associating an event to an event handler is called registration. We can specify event handlers as attributes in the HTML tags. The attribute names typically take the form on XXS format. That is, normally the corresponding event handler functions are in the format on load, on submit, on click, likewise. That is why on XXX format is given. So event handler means it is a JavaScript code associated with a particular part of a document and a particular event. A handler is executed if and when the given event occurs at the part of document to which it is associated. For example, an event handler associated with a button element could open an alert dialog when the button is clicked, or the handler associated with a form field could be used to verify the data the user entered whenever the value of the form field changes. Events are normally described in the format on XXX format, like on click, on submit, on mouse over, on blur, likewise. Events are not limited to basic user actions associated with the document such as click and mouse over. For example, browser support events such as resize, load and unload, which are related to window activity such as resizing the window or loading or unloading a particular document. Here also these things are also considered as events. So events can be generated by user or it can be generated by the corresponding web page itself. This is an example of a particular event. href is href, a particular URL is there. On click, alert by. other website. If you are clicking other website content on an HTML page, an alert box will be displayed with message by. That's an example. Now we can see the most common event handlers and the corresponding triggering time in JavaScript. The event handlers are on change, on click, on double click, on mouse down, on load, on submit, on reset, on unload, on resize. So we can see when this particular event handlers are invoked or when this particular handlers are triggered. On change is an event handler. It will be triggered when the value of the text field, text area or a drop down list is modified. If we edit in a particular text field or a particular text area, or if we change the value in a drop down list, then this particular on change event will be triggered. Then on click is there. On click indicates that the element has been clicked, and it may be a link or an image or a form element. Whenever a click up produces on this particular elements, this on click function will trigger. On double click indicates that element has been double clicked. On mouse down, the user presses the mouse button, indicates that a mouse button is being pressed with focus on the element. On load, a document or an image is loaded. Then on submit indicates the user submits a form or indicates a form submission generally by clicking the submit button. On unload, the user closes a document or a frame. Indicates, or this on unload indicates that the browser is leaving the current document and unloading it from the window or frame. This may also work on other elements that can bind to various remote data sources. On resize, a form is resized by the user, or this particular event fires when a resize event is triggered on the element or bubbles up from some descendant element. These are some of the most common event handlers that are associated with JavaScript. There will be a long list of event handlers that are available in JavaScript. If you want to explore more, you can visit the w3schools.com to explore more event handlers in JavaScript. The most common ones are specified here. Now we can see the on-click event handler example. On-click means whenever we are making a click on a particular component, it will produce some change in the corresponding HTML document. So here there is an example. An HTML tag is opened, then comes the head tag. Inside this head tag, a script tag is embedded. Script type is equal to text bar JavaScript. Then after the script tag's opening tag, a function is specified. The name of the function is say hello. So this function is expressed in JavaScript, which contains, the body of the function contains an alert statement which specifies hello word. And after that, script is closed, head is closed. Then comes the body of the corresponding HTML web page. Click the following button and see the result. Inside the paragraph tag, there is a text message like this. Click the following button and see result. Then after that, a form is opened. Input type is equal to button. On click is equal to say hello. Value is equal to say hello. So a button is created with value say hello, and whenever a click happens on that particular button, it will call say hello function. So then form is closed, body is closed, and HTML is closed. So initially, whenever we are loading this particular HTML code, what happens is we get a web page which contains the text. Click the following button and see result. with a say hello button. After the corresponding line, click the following button and see result. A button will appear with value say hello. So whenever the user clicks the say hello button, what happens is whenever a click happened on the say hello button, the corresponding say hello on click function will be invoked. On click calls the say hello function. So inside the say hello function, we can say that an alert statement is there. So what happens here it is whenever user clicks the corresponding say hello button, an alert box will be displayed with message hello world. So this is just a demonstration of on click function. Here simply we are specifying on click attribute towards the corresponding HTML button input type equal to button component. So in this on-click function actually works here it as a call towards the JavaScript function say hello. Hope you understood the on-click event handler example. Now we can see onload event handler. So this is we can see the illustration of onload and on unload. So just move to the top. Here an HTML tag is there, followed by head tag, followed by title tag. Inside the title mentioned as onload and on unload event handler example. Title tag is closed, head tag is closed. Then the body tag is opened, which contains two specification. Onload body contains two attributes. Onload is equal to alert of welcome to this page. On unload is equal to alert thanks for visiting this page. The body tag is start tag of body tag is closed. Then load and unload event test. Then body tag is closed. HTML tag is closed. So what happens here it is whenever this particular HTML web page is loaded, it produces an alert box with message welcome to this page. And if you are moving focus from this particular page to, or if you are closing that particular web page, what happens it is another alert box will be produced which contains the message thanks for visiting this page. So this is an example for on load event handler and on unload event handler. Now we can see the on mouse over and on mouse out event handler. On mouse over and on mouse event handler will work whenever the mouse produces a particular event in the corresponding web page. So whenever a mouse move happened on a particular component, this type of events will be generated. If the mouse focuses on a particular component, on mouse over event will occur. If a mouse moves out from a particular component, this on mouse event handler will work. So here there is an example. HTML tag is there, head tag is there, title tag is there. Inside the title tag, it specified that on mouse over, on mouse out, event handler demo. Then title tag is closed, head tag is closed. Then comes the body of the HTML document. Inside the body of the HTML document, an anchor tag is specified. A href is equal to http:// www.cuhk.edu.hk. So a URL is specified in the href attribute. Then after that, it specified the on mouse over attribute. On mouse over is equal to windows.status is equal to cuk home return true. Then this expression is in JavaScript. Then on mouse out is equal to status equal to null.
Then the corresponding a tag is closed. Then the angle bracket opening, and this is the angle bracket closing of the anchor tag. Then the link for that is cuhk, and the closing tag of anchor tag is mentioned. Then body is closed and HTML is closed. So this particular HTML web page is containing a simple simple hyperlink, where the hyperlink is on the text cuhk. So what happens here it is, whenever the mouse moves over the corresponding text cuhk on the web page, the window status should contain a message called cuhk home. cuhk home. Then if the mouse is out from the corresponding focus of cuhk link, what happens is there will be nothing displayed on the window status. So here what happening here it is, we have to make whenever a mouse is moved over a particular hyperlink text, it will produces a window status like cuhk home. If the mouse is moved out from the corresponding hyperlink text, nothing will be displayed in the Windows status bar. So this is the corresponding example. So most of the browsers did not support the Windows status. That is one problem here. So when the mouse cursor is over the link, the browser displays the text cuhk home instead of the URL. The return true of on mouse over forces browser not to display the URL. So here it is mentioned that window.status is equal to cuhk home. So instead of specifying, or instead of displaying the URL like www.cuhk.edu.hk, it will give the value cuhk home. So this return true gives the idea that browser will not be able to display the corresponding URL. Then this window status function as well as window.default status are disabled in Firefox. Some of the browsers are not supporting this type of functions. Hope you understood about the on mouse over and on mouse event handlers. So this type of event handler should occur whenever we are producing a change in the mouse control. So if we mention the particular HTML component with on mouse over and on mouse out functions, then the corresponding changes will be reflected on the web page. On submit event handler example. So now we are going to see the on submit event. On submit means this type of event will happen whenever something is submitted from the web page. So here there is an example. HTML tag is there, head tag is there, title tag is there, which contains the title on submit event handler example. So the title is closed. Then inside the head, script tag is open. Type is equal to text bar JavaScript. Then in the JavaScript area, there is a function specified. The name of the function is validate. Uh, Actually, in this particular example, the body of validate is not specified. If everything is okay, return true, otherwise return false. So actually, this validate function is having some statements regarding the validation of components that is placed on the body of web page. If everything works okay, then it will produces a true value. Otherwise, this function validate will return a false value. When the script tag is closed, head tag is closed, then after that the body tag is opened. Inside the body of the corresponding web page, a form tag is specified. Form action is equal to message bot, method is equal to post, on submit is equal to return validate. So here in the form tag itself, it specified the corresponding attribute on submit. So on submit is actually an event handler. So whenever this form is submitted with the help of a submit button, this particular return validate function of the validate function of the JavaScript will work. And what will be the output from the validate? If the form is having good values for all the components, it will produce a true value. Otherwise, it will produce a false value. So here for this particular web page, we are having a web page with a form on it. Then in order to submit the data from the form, we have having a submit button, as well as for clearing the data in the form components, we are having a reset button. So whenever user is providing data and click the submit button, the data will be, what happens here it is, the on submit function or on submit event handler will work. On submit event handler here takes the value return validate. So it will call the validate function in JavaScript. Inside the function validate, there will be statements for checking the validity of different inputs. So after checking all the input values, if everything is fine, it will return a true value. If any mistakes are there, it will return false value. So that is happened here. So if on submit event handler returns false, data is not submitted. If we are now clicking the submit button, the on submit event handler is having a false value. If on reset event handler returns false, form is not reset. So we can also specify on reset event towards this corresponding form. If on reset function is having a false value, means we are not able to clear the corresponding form. So this is about on submit and on reset. So far we discussed about the different types of events in JavaScript. What we discussed is on click, we discussed on load, on unload, then on mouse over, on mouse out. Then after that, finally we discussed the previous thing. So most of the university examinations, there will be a question from the event handling section of JavaScript, explained with examples which related to the events in JavaScript. Now we can see the JavaScript objects. JavaScript has built-in objects. We already seen array. Array is a type of built-in object. We already discussed about how to create an object. Object means this is something which is having attributes and functions. So here we are again specifying the JavaScript object. We have to see the different types of object that can be available in the mark package as well as date. So JavaScript has built-in objects, example mark, date. You can create your own objects, but JavaScript has no class. So I already mentioned that JavaScript is not an object-oriented programming language. So what is inside JavaScript is that JavaScript follows some of the properties of or some of the concepts. Objects are built on the fly. So built-in objects are objects corresponding to the three primitive data types: number, string, and boolean. So built-in objects in JavaScript are related to three primitive data types like number, string, and boolean. So whenever we are specifying the data types, the first letter of the corresponding data type should be in caps. So these data types wrap a single value and provide some methods. One method all the three wrapper objects have is value of. So all these three data type objects is having a common function, and that function is termed as value of. This value of function returns the corresponding primitive value of an object. If whatever it may be, if the object is belonging to a boolean data type, or if the object is belonging to a string data type, or if it is of number data type, if you are using value function with that corresponding variable or with that corresponding object, it will produces the value that is stored in the corresponding, it will produces the value that is stored in the corresponding object. So in order to create an object in JavaScript, we have to use the new keyword that we discussed in the previous sessions. So using this new keyword, we have to specify an object. Here variable var done obj is equal to new boolean of true. So here it mentions that done obj is an object which is of boolean true type. It is of boolean data type and initially it is having true value. Then another object is variable num object is equal to new number of 3.14159. So here num object is a object which follows number data type and initially it is having value 3.14159. We can see some of the built-in JavaScript objects. Arrays are there, so it creates new array objects. Boolean objects can be created in JavaScript. Then date. Date retrieves and manipulates dates and time. So date object is used for mentioning the date and time. So this object, using this object, we can manipulate the date and time in JavaScript. Error. So it returns runtime error information. So error is always an object of, or it will be treated in the case of exception. So what is the corresponding error thrown? So that thing can be identified using the error object. Function. Function, it creates new function objects. Then mark is there, which contains methods and properties for performing mathematical calculations. Then number is there, contains methods and properties for manipulating numbers. String is there, which contains methods and properties for manipulating text strings. So these are the objects that are available in JavaScript: array, boolean, date, error, function, mark, number, string. So if you want to get the complete list of methods in JavaScript, you just visit the site http://javascriptreference.info. You get an overall idea about what JavaScript objects are and what are the different functions that comes under each object. Now we see some of the objects and some of the functions associated with the objects. First of all, we have to see the built-in object like boolean and number. We know that boolean, it can have only two possible values, true or false. So it has no useful methods of its own. So this particular boolean data type is having a single function, that is value of. This value function returns what should be the value that is stored in the corresponding object. So in this particular case, it will produce the output either like true or it will be false. That is the only method available with Boolean objects. Now we see some of the methods that will be associated with number object. Number has formatting methods. So one is to exponential digits after dp. So here it converts the value of an object into an exponential notation with the hash requested digits after. With the hash requested digits after means with the number of requested digits after. So here there is an example: variable num is equal to new number of 10,000, new number of 10,000. Document dot write dot num dot to exponential of 1. To exponential of 1. So it what happens in the to exponential function is it converts the value of object into an exponential notation. Converts the value of an object into an exponential notation with the requested digits after. With the requested digits after. So here what it mentioned is here it is specifying the number of digits after is 1. So this 10,000 can be, or the output of this particular value 10,000 is, it will appear like this: 1.0e plus 4. So this 4 represents the number of zeros. Then next is to precision number of digits. So it converts a number into a number with the specified number of digits. So this particular function is used to convert, or it is used to specify how many digits that should be available for a particular number. If we are having a number with 2 digits and if we want to express it in 4 digits, then that much number precision will be created. The next function is to fix the digits after dp. So it rounds the number to the specified number of decimal places. So it will making a round off. So if it is having a big decimal part, what happens here it will round off the corresponding value to the nearest possible integer. That is to fix it. Now we see some of the methods associated with string object. First property is length, or first method is length, which tells the length function tells the number of characters in the string. The next is caret. Caret always takes an index value. So here the argument is a number. So it returns the character at location idx. So if a number is provided with caret function, it returns the character at that particular location. Then two uppercase function and two lowercase function is there. If a string is called with two uppercase, all the corresponding characters in the string will be converted to uppercase. The string is called with two lowercase, all the characters in the corresponding string is converted to lowercase. The next function is substring begin idx. So this begin idx is an integer value. So what happens here it is, if we call the substring of a particular integer with a string value, it will return a substring started at index location, which is specified by the begin index variable. So it returns a substring which is starting from the index value mentioned in the substring function. Now another substring function. This substring function is having two arguments, begin index and end index. So from a string, it will extract a substring with first index value as the begin index, and it takes the characters up to the end index value specified. But remember, this end index character, the end index position character is not included in the corresponding substring. The next function is index of str. Index of str returns the position where str first occurs in the string. So if we are having a string, if you want to search a string inside a string, we can use this index of str. So it will returns the first occurrence of the corresponding str in a string. So these are the properties associated with string object. Length finds the number of characters. Caret index, it returns the character at that particular index location. To uppercase, converting the characters to upper characters. Then to lowercase, converting the characters to lower cases. Then substring with one index value, it will generate a substring from that begin index onwards. Then substring begin index and end index means it will generate a substring which is started from begin index and end index, but the end index character is not included in the substring. Then index of str, it returns the first occurrence of str in the corresponding string. Then comes the mark object. Mark object is mark object means these are mainly related to mathematical concepts like Java mark. No instance needed. All constants and methods reference to the mark object. If we are using mathematical constants in our program or in our web page, we can use this mark dot, that corresponding constant like mark dot pi, mark dot strt2, like that. If you want to include the trigonometric functions, we can use like this: mark.sin, mark.cos, mark.tan, likewise. Number manipulations: mark.floor is available, mark.min is available, mark.round is available. Most of the mathematical functions are available in JavaScript. So if you are using any of the mathematical function, you have to use the mark object, then dot the corresponding function name. Mark.power, mark.exponential, mark.random. So this, all the mark related functions are similar as that of Java functions, Java's mark module functions. Now we see how we can include the date objects in a web page. So here, in order to create a date object, we have to specify variable. The name of the variable is equal to new date. So it will give the current date. If here nothing is specified, simply an object is created. That object is having the current date. Date has getText and setText methods for x is equal to full year, month, day, hours, minutes, seconds and milliseconds. So we can use getText and setText functions for retrieving as well as setting the x values. X values, like it may be an year value, it may be a month value, it may be a day value, hour, minutes, likewise. So some of the methods available with date objects are toString. ToString means it converts the date object to a string object. Then toGMT_string converts a string to according to the Greenwich time. Then toLocallyString, so converts a string according to the local time. So these are some of the methods that are available with date objects. Now see the array. Array means, we know that array means it's a collection of objects. So here we can see that variable list, this is an array, variable list is equal to 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So using this array, we have to see some of the array functions. Length. If you are using list.length, it specifies the length of the array or how many indices are there. So here it will be given as 5. 5 is the length of the corresponding array. Then slice function returns a part of an array. So the usage is like this: list.slice of 1, 3. List.slice of 1, 3 means from the list array, slicing first index onwards up to 3. So here first index value is 4, then second index value is 6, then the third one is actually excluded, so the output will be 4, 6. Then concat. So like other programming languages, this function is used to concatenate new elements to the end of the array, and it returns a new array. Here an example is the list.concat of 12. So what happens here, it is 12 will be appended to the end of the corresponding array. So our new array becomes 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Then join. Join function is another type of array function. It creates a string from the array elements separated by commas or other specified delimiters. Here an example is that list.join colon. So what happens here, it is this array will be converted to a string where each element should be separated with colon value. If nothing is specified, list or simply join, then it should be separated by commas. So here it is mentioned the colon as the delimiter. So all the elements should be here, all the elements should be separated with colon. Next, reverse function. It reverses order of the array elements of its calling array. So reverse function is normally dealing with reversing the elements of a particular array. If you are using list.reverse, so what happens is 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. Likewise, the array will be produced. Then sort. Sort means converts the elements to strings, sorts them alphabetically, or you can specify another order as a function of its calling array. So if you are using list.sort, what happens is it will arrange the numbers in normally ascending order. By default, it will produces it in ascending order. If you want to change the order, you can specify it in the function. Then comes the push function and pop function of arrays. Push and pop function are used for adding and deleting elements to the high end of the array. High end of the array means back end of the array. Then unshift and shift. This type of functions are used for adding and deleting elements at the beginning of the array. Just opposite as that of push and pop. So these are the functions which are related to arrays. Now we can see the associative array. Associative, we already mentioned the associative array in the previous class. Array with non-numeric indices. So for normal arrays, the indices, the index value ranges from, if the array size is n, it will ranges from 0 to n minus 1. So associative array means these are arrays where index value is specified by a key. So it is also known as hash, created as object and filled using index value. Variable my hash is equal to new object. So this is a new object. The name of that object is my hash. My hash me is equal to instructor. My hash you is equal to student. So array will be created like this. The index value are me and you. These are the key values. The value in me is instructor and the value in you is student. So if you want to generate the index as well as, or if you want to traverse through the corresponding associative array, you have to use a for in loop. So this type of loop will be needed for variable I in my hash, alert of I space my hash of I. So here I is me, my hash of I is instructor for the first iteration. In the second iteration, the alert box produces you student, you hyphen student. Likewise. Next, we can see the error and exception handling in JavaScript. JavaScript makes no distinction between the error and exception. So JavaScript treats both error and exception in the same way. In order to handle exceptions in JavaScript, we are having an event handler called onError. So for handling exceptions, the onError event handler is there. It is a method associated with the window object. It is called whenever an exception occurs. So onError is the event handler that should be invoked whenever an error or exception is happened in JavaScript. In JavaScript, like Java, we are having the try catch finally block. It is similar as that of Java, then for handling exceptions in a code segment. And we are having throw statement, throw an exception, and you can throw value of any type. Then comes error object. Error object is a default object for representing an exception. Each error object has a name and message properties. So remember, for handling error and exception handling in JavaScript, we are having an event handler called onError. This particular onError event handler will handle the error and exceptions in JavaScript. Like Java, here also we are having try catch finally block. Throw statement is there to throw an exception. So here this is the general syntax of try catch finally. So try contains the normal codes that might throw an exception. If an exception is thrown, it will be moved to the corresponding catch block. So catch block always takes an error variable. So inside the catch block, parenthesis, an argument should be there. That argument should be the error variable. So inside the catch block, codes here get executed if an exception is thrown in the try block. If the try block is having any exception, then that will be handled by the corresponding catch block. The error variable is an error object. And we are having a finally block executed after the catch or try block finish. Codes in finally blocks are always executed. One or both of catch and finally blocks must accompany the try block. So here the thing is that try contains a normal code. If the normal code contains any error or exception, that will be handled by the code inside the catch block. Finally is a block which is associated with try catch. If any exception or if exception is there or not, the finally block will be executed. So here there is an example. Inside this example, you can see that inside the code starts with the script tag. Inside the script tag, just mention that this JavaScript. Then try block is open. Document dot try block begins via. Then our next statement is eval. Eval contains 10 plus star 5. So that is a wrong expression. So what happens here it is an exception will be thrown. So that exception will be handled by the corresponding cache block. So inside the cache block, it specified as error variable, document.write of exception code. So here an exception is code. Then after that, document.write of error variable.name plus vr. Then document.write error message plus error variable.message plus vr. So here inside the web browser you can see the corresponding thing. Try block begins, that is the first statement. Then using by the eval statement here it throws an exception code. So here an exception is called by this eval statement. Then so what happens is control moves to the cache block. So it states that exception code, then vr, so it moves to the next line. Document.write of error name, that is here error name, error variable.name. So the error variable contains a name called syntax error, then vr, next line. In the next line, document.write of error message in the corresponding error variable is error variable.message. Expected expression got star. So here plus star is not an approved valid expression, only plus or star is needed. So that that error message is expressed here. Then after that the finally block will be executed. Finally block reached. So this will be the output of this corresponding code. Now is another example. So here there is a throwing exception. In this, instead of try catch block, we can see how we can throw an exception, custom generated exception. So here it is inside the try block, it is having a prompt, enter a number 1 or 2. By default, the prompt box is having one value. If num is equal to 1, throw some error message. So what happens here it is, if the user specified value is 1, it throws some error message, some error will be thrown. Else if num is equal to 2, it throw 1, 2, 3. Then else throw new error invalid input. If user is inputting 1, it will throw error some error message. If user is inputting 2, it will throw 1, 2, 3. If a user is inputting any other number, it will throw new error called invalid input. So whatever the user input, it will generate an error. So inside the cache, so if an error occurs or if the user puts OK, the cache block will execute it. Inside the cache block, alert box will be generated. Inside the alert box, type of error message plus ration plus error. What is the error? That error message will be displayed. If error instance of error, then another alert box will be displayed with corresponding error message. We can see what will be the output. 1, if we put 1 here, enter a number. If the user input 1 and press OK, the error will be like this, undefined some error message. This will be the output generated. If the user inputs 2 value, undefined 1, 2, 3 error will be thrown. This type of alert box will be generated. If the user input any other number, it produces an alert box with undefined value and invalid input. That's the output. So likewise, the corresponding exception handling works in the JavaScript. So this is all about this session. I hope you enjoy. Thank you.